ever been through an exercise to define a company mission, vision, and values and spend days staring at the wall or banging your head up against your table or just feeling like you've been lost in the abyss? Or, maybe you have a mission, vision, values already and it's the normal corporate gobbledygook, nonsense that means absolutely nothing that could apply to any business anywhere in the world at any time, which I think is probably the default. Or you have this really lofty aspirational kind of message that you might see on like a poster somewhere with like a people, what's a really good one? Motivation posters. Oh, everybody in like a rowboat rowing the same way and being like, teamwork, it's wonderful. We've gone through a mission, vision, values, recently, and going through the exercise of it just reminded me of how completely nuts this is. And the first question you of course run into is like, there's a certain level of like, let's just say, values, do you really need a document, right? So like, honesty, integrity, trustworthiness. If you're hiring retail workers, do you really need to define a core value saying that you're not going to steal from the company? And I've seen these companies list values of being like, you don't steal. And that's a pretty fundamental, I think, something disconnected at that point. I do believe that there is a fair amount of like table stakes of like baseline integrity and like, value, like you're going to be nice to people. Do you need to define this in your company values? Like we're nice to people? What industry are you in that you're defining your value as we need to be nice to people? So what helped us go through this exercise was redefining values, not as something that was like this aspirational, like this is what we're trying to, achieve, but more defining values as something that you would be offended if somebody accused you of not doing. Right. So like if somebody accused me of, I'm an Eagle Scout, right? So from my oldest son is now a Tiger Cub Scout. So I'm going through it with him and we're practicing, we're talking about the Scout, the motto and the oath and the law and what that actually means. And, he's 6 years old and I started this as well as 6 years old. I'm much older than 6 at this point, but I've lived my entire life, my entire conscious life with this like base framework of things being bred into me, Boy Scout mottos, be prepared, right? Like I cannot, like if I am going somewhere and I don't feel like I'm equipped to handle and to deal with different potential situations, like I feel very uncomfortable. Like it's a big problem for me. Emergency preparedness at our house is a big thing for me, right? It's just core to my nature. Anyway, so if somebody, if I was accused of not being trustworthy, right? Like that's a pretty aggressive assault on my core psyche and framework as a person. And I didn't invent this idea, by the way, of like I don't want to say like anti-values, but like, what are your core values for a company that if somebody that was working for you or if you as the company or an employee was accused of not adhering to or not doing or not being, that it would be so reprehensible to you that you would be offended, freak out, and have like a esoteric crisis, right? That's a value. That is your actual value for your business that you want to adhere to, right? What else is a value? A value is something that you are using to make hiring and firing decisions from. A retail employee stealing from the cash register, if you caught that, what happens? You separate that employee immediately, right? Like there's not like a counseling session or performance improvement plan. It's just like you've violated a core tenet and value, like there's just like you can't steal, right? Like you can't have access to a cash register and steal. Based on what your business is and what you are and what you're doing, you probably already know what these things are. What are behaviors where if they maintained would be separation, would be like, this is just not a good fit, like, you hear companies that have rules that say like, don't hire assholes, right? Like don't be evil was another one, right? Like that's a great aspirational thing, but like define evil. That's the other thing. You have to be able to define these things and have, a very specific, behaviors around them. Like don't be evil. Like what's evil is manipulating, is giving Apple billions of dollars a year to be the default search engine for all iOS devices sold worldwide. Is that evil? Like, I don't know, you're squeezing out competition. Like, is that evil? So they need to be specific and they need to elicit a response from you that if somebody, if you don't adhere to them, if somebody accuses you of not adhering to them, or if you find an employee that doesn't live by that it is a simple, easy, like, employee research. Oh, we're going through and we're reviewing Bob's performance, and Bob's a great worker, but he, there's just this one thing, and he does like blah 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 blah, And like that should just be like, nope, you don't meet our core values. Like you shouldn't work here. It's another place. They'll be a better fit for you. And we're just not it. Your mission should be aspirational. Your vision needs to be specific. Where are you actually going? What are you trying to get to? The reason why your vision needs to be specific is you need to be able to make decisions based on whether or not it actually achieves your vision, right? And you can go through different exercises and you can use EOS, you can use scaling up, you can use OKRs, you can do vivid vision, you can do a bunch of different things, and you can talk about it from like, do you have a 10-year, 3-year, 1 year, what are your quarters? And the whole exercise and the idea behind this is just more like when you wake up in the morning or when your team wakes up in the morning and they say, okay, what do we need to do today? What do we need to do this week? What needs to happen this month? What needs to happen this quarter? If you don't have a vision in some place that you're tracking to, you're not going to get there. And I didn't mute my devices this morning, so that's the output, right? So anyways, mission should be aspirational. Vision should be clear. Start on a long one. It's easy. You say you start at the 10-year mark, we want to achieve X. And then when you look at it and say, okay, in order to achieve X in 10 years, we need to do Y in 3 years. It means we need to do Z in 1 year. And then you backing up, and it's actually a really good filter to run through because, things like, what is the most important thing for us to do this quarter? Well, right now, my quarter is all about, can we scale a repetitive, can we have a consistent and scalable sales process? There's lots of other stuff the business can do, always stuff that the business can do. But the only thing that actually matters in that in order to hit our 1-year plan is necessary to hit our 3-year plan and our 10-year plan is, can we develop and scale a sales process? Is it repetitive, repeatable? Is it scalable? Does it work? Does it not work? Nothing else matters. And the clarity that you get out of that is actually very refreshing. It helps also as an entrepreneur, as a founder, it helps deal with the the impossibleness of what you're trying to achieve and the dread that comes in if you have really concrete goals. Like in 90 days, we need to have this done. And maybe you hit it in 90 days, maybe you don't hit it. Maybe it takes you 2 quarters to do it. That's fine. But as long as you know what that actual thing is that you need to do, and you're going to that. And I mean, OKRs, again, I don't care what system you're on. Pick a system, adhere to the system. The system is just about communication to your team and whether you have a process you're following to create and communicate that system. So the whole point of all this, again, was really about values. Your values should be, let's call it anti-behaviors, and you should be able to really identify that, like this is the behavior and this is the standard. And if the standard is not met or the behavior is not there, this is not an employment decision that should continue, right? It should just be that simple. Like we shouldn't hire this person or we shouldn't employ this person, and it should be clear on both sides, by the way. This is not like a one-sided thing where your team doesn't know what the values are. Like they need, you know what the values are, right? This is communicated, this is shared, this is discussed. So I'm Max Clark. That's a quick thought on mission, vision, values, but really on values.